What happens when a little girl just 5 years old is thrown out of her home by her angry father, and a millionaire CEO stops in the middle of the street to comfort her? This is the heartwarming story of Grace and Dominic, two lives that meet in the most unexpected way. A tale full of suspense, emotion, and kindness, reminding us that love and compassion can heal even the deepest wounds. The bright sun shone over the small neighborhood. Yet for Grace, only 5 years old, the day felt colder than winter. She sat on the floor with her teddy bear pressed against her chest, the soft toy her only friend in moments of fear. Her father stood towering above her, his face twisted with anger. "Grace, I told you not to touch my papers!" he shouted, his voice echoing through the tiny house. The little girl's hands shook. She hadn't meant to mess anything. She had only wanted to draw a little picture with her crayons near her father's desk. Her small voice quivered. I'm sorry, Daddy. I just wanted to show you my drawing." But her words never softened him. His eyes were heavy with frustration, his heart too blinded by pride. He had lost his temper too many times before, but today, the storm inside him grew stronger. "You never listen! You ruin everything!" His hand waved angrily toward the door. "Get out of this house until you learn how to behave!" Grace gasped, hugging her teddy tighter. But Daddy, where will I go?" Her voice broke into little sobs as fragile as a bird's cry. But anger deafened him. He pulled the door open, and with a harsh motion, he pushed her outside. The door slammed shut behind her with a sound that pierced her heart. The sun was shining, yet Grace felt as if she had stepped into an icy world. Barefoot on the rough ground, her tiny arms wrapped around her teddy bear, trying to hold on to the only warmth she had left. Her small face pressed against the bear's fur, tears wetting its already worn fabric. She whispered, "Don't leave me, Teddy. You're all I have." The street was alive with cars passing by, neighbors talking in the distance, but no one noticed the little girl sitting alone by the sidewalk. Her golden hair shimmered in the daylight, but her cheeks were red from crying. She kept glancing back at the closed door, hoping, praying that it might open, that her father would call her back, scoop her into his arms, and say he hadn't meant it. But the silence from inside the house was deafening. The world felt too big, too scary, and she was only a little girl with a teddy bear for protection. Every sound on the street made her jump. A barking dog, a honking car, even the wind brushing against the trees. Grace whispered again to her teddy, "Daddy didn't mean it. He'll come for me, right?" Her voice cracked. She had no answer. The sun moved higher in the sky, but instead of warming her, it only reminded her how lonely she was. She tucked her knees under her chin, hiding her face, while her teddy sat squished between her arms. That was when her small heart began to wonder. Was she really unwanted? Was she really so bad that even her own father didn't want her near? The thought made her chest ache in a way no child should ever feel. The day had only just begun, but for Grace it already felt like the longest, hardest day of her little life. And as she sat there trembling, hugging her teddy bear tighter, fate was quietly preparing to send someone down that very street, a man in a sky-blue suit who would see her and whose heart would never let him walk away. The city streets were alive with the usual rhythm of the day, cars humming, shopkeepers greeting customers, and people rushing to their destinations. Among them walked Dominic, a man of 36, dressed sharply in his sky-blue suit. Dominic wasn't just anyone. He was a millionaire CEO, the kind of man whose presence turned heads. His face was calm, his steps confident, and his aura powerful. But unlike many men of his wealth, he never let pride harden his heart. Beneath the polished surface, he carried a quiet loneliness that money could never cure. He had just left a meeting, his mind still filled with numbers, deals, and the endless responsibilities that came with running a vast empire. Yet, even with success at his fingertips, there was a part of him that longed for something simple, something real. As he strolled down the street, he caught sight of a small figure sitting near the sidewalk. At first, he thought it was just a child waiting for her parent. But the longer he looked, the more his steps slowed. It was a little girl. Her dress was wrinkled, her blonde hair messy, her tiny knees pulled close to her chest. And in her arms she held a teddy bear so tightly, it looked like her lifeline. Dominic's sharp blue eyes softened instantly. Something inside him stirred, something he couldn't explain. Why was she sitting alone like that? Why did her small shoulders tremble under the bright sun, as if she were lost in a cold world? He stopped walking. His polished shoes remained still on the pavement as the world moved around him. People brushed past, but Dominic's gaze was fixed only on the child. He felt his chest tighten, his breath catch, as though life itself had placed this little girl in front of him for a reason. He glanced around. Surely her parents must be nearby. But no one came. The girl didn't even look up. She only hugged her teddy bear, rocking slightly as if trying to comfort herself. Dominic's heart whispered, "She's alone." The thought sent a wave of unease through him. A man who dealt with millions every day suddenly felt powerless in the face of a child's silent tears. He took a step closer, then stopped, unsure if approaching her might frighten her. But then he saw her lips move. She was whispering into her teddy bear. He couldn't hear the words, but the sight tore at him. A 5-year-old child alone on the street, whispering to a toy as if it were her only friend. Dominic clenched his jaw. No deal, no meeting, no empire could matter more than this moment. He adjusted his suit jacket, took a slow breath, and crouched down to her level. For the first time in a long time, Dominic felt his heart race. Not from business, not from wealth, but from compassion. This wasn't just chance, this was destiny. And as his shadow stretched over the little girl, her head lifted ever so slightly. Their eyes met, his full of concern, hers full of fear and sadness. At that moment, Dominic knew one thing with absolute certainty. His life was about to change. Dominic leaned down slowly, careful not to scare the little girl. His shadow stretched across the pavement, and his expensive watch gleamed in the sunlight, but none of that mattered to him. All he saw was a tiny child, shivering despite the warmth of the day, clutching a teddy bear as if it were her last hope. "Hey there, sweetheart," he said softly, his deep voice gentle, almost like a whisper. "Are you okay? Why are you sitting out here all alone?" Grace lifted her head just a little. Her blue eyes, wide and watery, met his. For a moment, she said nothing. She only hugged her teddy tighter, as though even this tall, kind-looking stranger might try to take it away. Dominic's heart broke. He had faced tough men across boardrooms, fought battles over contracts worth millions, but nothing had ever felt as difficult as earning the trust of this small girl. "It's okay," he continued, lowering himself to one knee so he wasn't towering over her. "I won't hurt you. I just want to make sure you're safe." Grace's lips trembled. Her tiny voice finally came out, shaky and soft. "Daddy told me to leave. He said he doesn't want me anymore." Dominic froze. The words pierced him deeper than any insult or betrayal he had ever faced in his adult life. A father telling his little girl to leave. A man rejecting the most innocent part of his world. It was unthinkable. He swallowed hard, trying to hide the storm rising inside him. "Your daddy told you to leave?" His tone was careful, calm, but his eyes betrayed his disbelief. Grace nodded, fresh tears rolling down her cheeks. She wiped them quickly with the back of her hand, as though afraid even her sadness might annoy someone else. "I was bad. I spilled milk, and I touched his papers. He yelled at me. He said I ruin everything." Dominic felt his throat tighten. He wanted to march to that door, knock it down if he had to, and demand an explanation. But looking at Grace's fragile face, he knew anger wouldn't help her right now. What she needed was comfort. He exhaled slowly and asked the only question that came to his mind, the one that weighed heavier than gold. "Do you believe that, Grace? Do you really think you ruin everything?" The little girl blinked at him, her tears glistening in the sun. She whispered, "Yes, because Daddy said so." That answer shattered Dominic. He pressed a hand gently over his chest, feeling his own heart ache. This wasn't just a child repeating words. This was a child accepting them, wearing them like chains around her tiny soul. Dominic shook his head firmly, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "Sweetheart, listen to me. You don't ruin anything. You're not bad. You're precious. You hear me? You are a gift." Grace's eyes widened slightly at his words. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. She clutched her teddy, almost as if she were asking the bear if this man could be trusted. Dominic leaned closer, his sky-blue suit brushing against the ground. But he didn't care. Sometimes grown-ups get angry. Sometimes they say things they don't mean. But don't you ever believe you're not wanted. Because you are worth more than you can ever imagine. Grace's small lips parted. For the first time, there was a flicker of hope in her eyes, a tiny spark breaking through the shadows of doubt. And in that quiet moment, Dominic realized something profound. This child had asked no question out loud, but her tears had been a question in themselves. Am I worth loving? And that silent question had shaken him more than anything in his life. Dominic could see Grace's little shoulders trembling. It wasn't from the weather. The sun was shining brightly. It was from fear, from sadness, from the heavy weight of being unwanted. No child should ever feel that way. He glanced at his own suit jacket. The fabric was fine, tailored, a shade of sky blue that always made him look confident in meetings. It was expensive, probably worth more than the toys in Grace's entire room. But what good was a jacket if it couldn't give comfort to someone who needed it? Without hesitation, Dominic slipped the jacket off his shoulders. The cool air brushed against his crisp white shirt, but he didn't care. With gentle hands, he leaned closer to Grace. "Here," he said softly. "This is for you." Grace blinked in confusion as he draped the large jacket around her tiny body. It swallowed her completely, the sleeves hanging far past her hands, the hem nearly brushing the ground. For a second, she looked almost like a little bird wrapped in soft wings. She clutched the edges, pulling it tighter around her, and whispered, "Why are you helping me? You don't even know me." Dominic's throat tightened at the question. How could he explain? How could he tell her that the moment he saw her, something inside him had shifted? He smiled gently, though his eyes shone with emotion. "Because no child should sit alone in the street. Because you deserve warmth, safety, and love, even from a stranger." Grace lowered her eyes, burying her face into the soft fabric of the jacket. For the first time since her father pushed her out, she felt safe. She could still hear the echo of her father's harsh words in her mind, but now they were muffled, softened, as though Dominic's jacket had built a shield between her and the pain. Dominic reached out carefully, brushing a tear from her cheek with his thumb. "You don't have to be afraid anymore." Grace looked at him again. The kindness in his eyes made her heart beat faster, not in fear, but in wonder. Could someone really care about her, even if they didn't know her name? "Do you feel warmer now?" Dominic asked. She gave the tiniest nod. "Yes, it feels like a hug." Her answer broke him and healed him at the same time. A child who compared clothing to a hug because she had been starved of real ones. Dominic swallowed hard, steadying his emotions. "Then keep it, Grace. That jacket is yours now." Her eyes widened. "Mine?" He nodded firmly. "Yes, yours. And every time you wear it, I want you to remember, you are special." She hugged the jacket close to her small chest, her teddy bear squished underneath, and for the first time all day, a faint smile touched her lips. Dominic watched her closely. Something deep in his heart stirred, an ache he hadn't felt before. In his world of numbers and contracts, he had almost forgotten what true purpose felt like. But here, with a 5-year-old girl wrapped in his jacket, he realized it. The greatest power a man could have was the power to give comfort. And though Grace didn't know it yet, that one act of kindness was about to change both their lives forever. Dominic knew he couldn't simply walk away. Wrapping Grace in his jacket was a start, but it wasn't enough. She deserved answers. She deserved protection. Most of all, she deserved to know her father's love again. He looked down at her tiny hand, still clutching her teddy through the folds of his jacket. Slowly, he extended his own hand. "Grace," he said gently, "let's go back to your house together. I'll be right beside you. You won't face this alone." Grace hesitated. Her small fingers twitched nervously. "But Daddy was angry. What if he yells again?" Dominic gave her the kind of steady look that only a man with deep conviction could give. "If he yells, he'll answer to me. You don't need to be afraid anymore." Something in his calm strength made her nod. Carefully, she slid her little hand into his much larger one. His palm was warm, his grip firm, but gentle. For the first time that day, she felt like she wasn't walking into danger. She was walking toward hope. Step by step, they approached the small house. Each footfall felt heavy with suspense. Grace's heart pounded in her chest, her teddy pressed tightly against her cheek. Dominic's tall frame cast a long shadow across the doorstep, his expression unreadable. He knocked. The sound echoed through the door, sharp and commanding. A moment later, the door creaked open. Grace's father appeared, his face still marked with the bitterness of anger. His brows furrowed when he saw his daughter standing there, wrapped in another man's jacket, holding the hand of a stranger. "What is this?" the father demanded, his voice rough. Dominic didn't flinch. His eyes, steady and piercing, locked onto the man's. "This is your daughter. The little girl you cast out. The little girl you should be protecting, not abandoning." The father's face darkened. "It's none of your business. She disobeys. She doesn't listen. I lost my temper." Dominic's jaw tightened, but his tone remained firm. "Every parent gets angry, but no amount of frustration justifies leaving your child in the street. She's 5 years old. Do you understand what could have happened to her? She could have been hurt, or worse, and all because you let anger rule you." The father's eyes flickered with shame, but he looked away, unwilling to admit fault. Grace's tiny voice broke the silence. "Daddy," she whispered, tears filling her eyes again. "I'm sorry. I'll be good. Please don't make me leave again." Her words cut through Dominic like a blade. A child begging for permission to stay in her own home. What could be more heartbreaking? Dominic stepped closer, his tall figure casting a protective stance in front of Grace. His voice deepened, filled with unshakable conviction. "She doesn't need to be good to earn your love. She doesn't need to be perfect to stay in her own house. She's your daughter. She's a gift. If you push her away, you'll regret it every day of your life." The father's lips trembled. His gaze shifted from Dominic's fiery eyes to his little girl's tear-streaked face. Her small hands clutched the oversized jacket, as if afraid he might tear it away too. Suddenly his anger cracked. The mask of pride slipped, his knees buckled, and he sank down right there at the doorway, his eyes filled with tears. "Grace," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry. I should never have said those things. I should never have let you go." The little girl gasped softly, then dropped her teddy to the ground. She threw her arms around him, clinging to him with all the strength her tiny body had. "I love you, Daddy," she cried. "I just wanted you to love me too." Her father's arms tightened around her, his tears soaking into her hair. "I do, baby, I do, more than anything. I was blind with anger. Please forgive me." Dominic stood silently, watching the scene unfold. His chest rose and fell heavily, his eyes damp, though he quickly blinked away the emotion. He had faced men begging for second chances in business, but nothing compared to watching a father beg for forgiveness from his little girl. For Grace, the world finally shifted. She wasn't outside anymore. She wasn't unwanted. She was back in her father's arms, where she had always belonged. Dominic stood quietly on the doorstep as father and daughter clung to each other. For a long moment he didn't move. He didn't need to. This was not his victory. It was Grace's. The battle she had unknowingly fought with her tears, her innocence, and her tiny trembling voice had softened a hardened heart. Grace's father held her tightly, his breath uneven as guilt poured through him. "I thought I was teaching you a lesson," he whispered, his voice shaking, "but I was the one who needed to learn. I let anger speak louder than love. I almost lost you because of it." The little girl pulled back just enough to look at his face. Her cheeks were still wet, but her eyes glowed with forgiveness. "It's okay, Daddy. I still love you." Her words, simple yet powerful, hit Dominic harder than any speech ever could. Children had no pride, no walls. They forgave easily because their hearts were pure. Dominic's own heart swelled with emotion. He cleared his throat softly. "Remember this," he said firmly, his gaze steady on the father. "Wealth, power, pride, none of it matters if you don't protect what's most precious. Your daughter is your treasure. Don't ever let your anger blind you again." The father nodded, unable to speak, only holding Grace tighter. Grace, still wrapped in Dominic's jacket, turned her little head toward him. "Thank you," she whispered shyly. "You made me warm when I was cold." Dominic crouched down again, meeting her at eye level. His lips curved into a gentle smile. "No, Grace. You made me warm too. You reminded me what truly matters in this world." For years, Dominic had built empires of glass towers and companies worth millions, but standing there, he realized none of it could compare to the simple act of kindness, giving a jacket to a child who needed warmth. He stood tall again, slipping his hands into his pockets, and took a deep breath. Around them, life in the neighborhood carried on. Neighbors sweeping porches, children riding bicycles, cars passing by. But for Dominic, the world felt changed. As he prepared to leave, Grace's father called after him. His voice was full of humility. "Sir, thank you, not just for helping her, but for saving me from my own mistakes." Dominic gave a small nod. "Be the father she needs. That will be thanks enough." With that, he turned to walk away. Yet the image of Grace, tiny and smiling despite her red eyes, stayed burned in his memory. She waved her little hand, her teddy tucked safely under her arm, his oversized jacket still wrapped around her small frame. That moment left Dominic with a truth he would never forget. Society does not fail because of poverty or lack of money. It fails when love is withheld, when children are made to feel unwanted. And perhaps, just perhaps, if more people stopped in the middle of the street, if more people chose kindness over indifference, if more fathers, mothers, and strangers remembered that children are not burdens but blessings, then the world would be warmer, safer, and brighter. Grace had learned that even when the world felt cruel, love could return. Her father had learned that control of anger was more valuable than control of anything else. And Dominic had learned that compassion was the greatest wealth a man could ever carry. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, a little girl with a teddy bear smiled through her tears. Her father held her close, and a millionaire CEO walked away with a heart fuller than any bank account could ever be.